Hi, this is Carol from Innovate Training, and this is From the Classroom to the Kitchen Nook. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, this is kind of a carryover from what we did last week. Last week we talked about academic integrity. Well, this is a carryover from that. So, when you are preparing a paper or some other type of research item, your instructor is going to expect you to use resources other than your textbook or other than the resources available in the classroom or the teacher themselves. So you want to make sure the resources you're getting or you're accessing are credible. And we'll explain that. So, finding credible resources. How can you trust your resources? In this day of fake news and flat-out lies and falsifying of test results and numbers, you hear it all over. This group is saying that, this group is saying this. It's really hard to get a grasp on what is real. We used to be able to trust what we heard on the television and radio. Books were mostly written by professionals and intellects who, for the most part, did their best to present reliable information. And that's not quite so true today. Let's talk about old school research. And yeah, I'm part of that group with the old school research. What did we get to use? We got to use textbooks, encyclopedia sets. You know how your mom bought a group of encyclopedias and they were set there on the shelf? Or sometimes they'd get to the letter G and then never buy the rest of them. Sometimes they'd have specials at gas stations and grocery stores. You buy the encyclopedia, whatever. Or library books. So we were really quite limited as to what resources we had available to us. As students, though, we trusted the information contained in those sources. We really didn't have much choice, to tell you the truth, because that was what sources we had. And to tell you the truth, it really didn't cross our minds that this information could be false. I tell you, one of the first instances, not the only, but one of the first instances of non-credible research was the whole Spock thing. And I'm not talking about Mr. Spock, I'm talking about Dr. Spock. And those of you who are my age or older will remember or have at least heard about Dr. Spock. It's Benjamin McLean Spock. He was an American pediatrician whose baby and child care books were among the best-selling. And he was thought to be the authority on child rearing and child care. Even he was a pediatrician, and we all know what a pediatrician is. That's a doctor who specialized in infants and children. He was a best-selling pediatrician, and he sounded authoritative. He had that authoritative sounding. Well, it turns out that many modern experts believe that some of his methods were not only wrong, but were harmful. And I remember hearing that and going, not Dr. Spock. Dr. Spock couldn't be wrong. Well, nobody's perfect. And that was one of the first cases. But today it's a whole different. So what's on TV? My point is that when resources were challenged, it happened over years. So in other words, the Dr. Spock books came out over years. People read them and critiqued them and then brought out different books. Today, somebody puts a news story out, immediately you have people countering it. You have people putting books out and putting something on YouTube or TV. It's really kind of hard. Well, today's in the internet age, it's changed all the way that we do research. It is wonderful to have so many sources available at our fingertips. We don't have to go to the library. And the sad thing is, a lot of libraries are dying because of this. I still love going to the library, by the way. It's kind of a cool place to go. It's quiet, and, well, some of them are quiet. And, you can sit there and relax and read. But the problem is now it's created a problem that there's too much information. Whereas before we didn't have enough, We had too little. Today we have too much. Too many opinions. Too many uneducated, unqualified experts who are adding their opinions on important matters. Be aware that just because somebody wears a white coat or has the doctor by their name doesn't necessarily mean they're an expert. Now remember, what is a doctor? A doctor is somebody who's either got a medical degree or they have a doctor of philosophy or PhD. Anybody could be a doctor, but not necessarily be a specialist on that particular subject. And I'm not going to name anybody in particular, but there's famous spokespeople out there who go by the name of doctor, and it's rightly so, they are doctors, but they're not necessarily doctors in that area of specialty that they are speaking with authority on. So just be aware of that. So let's talk about 8 steps to find credible resources. Number 1, and this is one of the most important ones, be skeptical. In other words, use critical thinking. Just because something is presented as a fact doesn't mean that it is a fact. Question everything, whether it's from a book, article, website, or even an academic site. Just because someone wears a white coat, like I just said, doesn't mean they're an expert or they're knowledgeable. Number 2, examine the source and the author. Examine their credentials. Like I was just saying, that a person could have a PhD or medical doctor, but they won't necessarily have it in that particular area. So don't stop just at doctor. Go on, or PhD. Move on from there and research what is it that they specialize in. What is their background? Their affiliations. Always research the background of any sources that you're considering for your paper. Are they part of a special interest group? Can they be biased in their opinion on the matter? And do they have vested interest of their own in this information? In other words, are they trying to sell you on something, or are they trying to convince you of something for their own purposes? Number 3, evaluate what sources are cited. So you're citing resources as you're writing your paper. When they are putting their information together, they should be citing their resources. So be aware of anything, any article, journal, website, whatever, that does not cite their own sources. Research the data the author is using and be aware if the author does not list their sources. Always review the sources list and make sure they stand up to scrutiny. So this takes a little effort on your part as a student, but I'm telling you, if you take this extra step, your papers will have a higher level of credibility. When you get to the college level and you're doing your thesis, this is going to be expected because your paper or your thesis will be challenged. And you want to be able to let it stand up. You don't want to have Bob's blog as a resource because your challenger is going to call you on that. Okay? Number 4, make sure that the source is up to date. A lot has happened in the last 10 years, the last 20 years. Due to the speed at which technology moves, information goes out as quickly as it comes in. Make sure that your sources are still relevant and applicable. This is going to depend on what the subject is. Technology, medicine, and sociological issues are changing on a daily basis. Number 5, check endorsements and reviews. Now you can read reviews on books and articles and journal articles on reputable websites. The reviews that are written on the book itself are usually going to be self-serving. So in other words, the publisher is probably going to cherry pick some of the best reviews that they've gotten and leave out some of the not so best reviews. So you want to make sure that you check all the reviews. If the review of a particular book is not available, then check the author's reputation. What is it like? Maybe what are the reviews in some of his or her previous articles or documents or books, whatever. Number 6, check the publisher of the source. Are they reputable? Large publishers or reputable magazines or journals will thoroughly check the facts of information that they are distributing or they're allowing to be published in their magazine. Some magazine or journals, some publishers have actually dismissed authors for falsifying their information in their articles. So usually when somebody submits an article, unless they have a well reputation, there's usually somebody that goes along and fact checks these articles to make sure that what they're publishing is factual. So that's one area that you can be sure. Number 7, make sure the source is not vague or uses loaded terms to support itself. Be aware of vague terms like recent studies show. You know how they use that in commercials of the toothpaste. Recent studies shows that this toothpaste is better than everybody else's. Well, we know that that really doesn't mean anything. Or terms like many people believe. Well, yeah, many people believe in Santa Claus too. That doesn't mean he's real. I'm sorry, kids. Yeah, he's real to you.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. But they don't back these claims. If you're going to say many recent studies show, the article should then cite what those studies are and what the results are, what the results were. Or if many people believe, then they should show the results of surveys, many surveys, not just 10 people. Okay, so be aware of things like that. Number 8, be aware of bias. Always evaluate if the source presents clear, unbiased information, or if it aims at persuading you for a specific view. An article should most likely give you both sides of a point, especially if it's a controversial term or questionable. Both sides of it. This group says this group says that. While this type of source may be credible, in other words, a religious organization may put out an article about the life of Christ. Of course they're going to be biased on whether Christ was who he was. That's okay, because we know the source, and you're expecting that. But even then, they need to be sure that what information they are presenting is credible. Watch out for dog whistles. These are terms and phrases that have well-known meaning to those insiders that could indicate some kind of hidden agenda, especially when it comes to prejudices and hidden agendas. You just want to be aware of these types of terms that they might use that indicate something that maybe the group that believes this knows what it means, but those who don't believe it, it sounds benign. I'll do another lesson on dog whistles, and we'll explain what that means a little bit more in detail. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this session. If you have any other tips or any other ideas that you may have thought of or you may have experienced, please respectfully put them down in the comments. I'd like to hear about them, and I can include them in maybe a part 2. Well, I'll see you next time. I'll be going over some basic math shortcuts that will help you when it comes to taxes, when it comes to percentages, tips, and things like that. So we'll be doing that next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for lots of good stuff coming your way.